Today it's all about yarn. I'll be taking a scarf off the loom, and I'll be carding and spinning, and I'll also show you the brand new sweater I've just started to make with my own hand spun yarn. So let's get started. All right, I finished my clasped-weft scarf, and I've just been cutting off the warp strings, and these are the last three. Are you ready? Last three. I'll do a nice little knot. Now, people on my Rigid Heddle Loom group on Facebook talk about hem stitching the ends. I'm going to do that at some point, but I love the look of those little knots. So, but this is the unwinding of the scarf for the very first time. Now, I had trouble at the end. There was a knot, I think I mentioned before, a knot in the warp thread, and while I was weaving, the knot came undone under the pressure of the warp, and the yarn came apart. And so I'm weaving along, and I see this stray warp thread hanging in there, and that was very distressing. So I had to stop a little shorter than I would have preferred. I would have rather worked all the way to the end. But I am taking out these little slats at the end, because of course I'm going to need to get this end free, and then I'm going to need to tie off the loose ends here as well, the fringe on this end. Okay. I'll speed up through some of this so you don't have to watch all of this laborious work. Okay, so now this fringe end is free, and I'm going to knot this up, and then we'll be done. Now that I'm working on this end, you see that I have the series of knots going along here, and that's from where I attached them to the front warping stick with that string. But one thing I like about leaving those cardboard slats in there is that I have a lot of space between the beginning of my weave and these knots. I have enough space, in fact, that instead of hurting my fingers by fighting with these knots, I am just going to snip them off, which is a lovely thing, because I wouldn't use all this length anyway. The fringe would be too long if I used all that. So. Okay, and now I'll speed up the video and you can watch me knot all this. I'm going to do 3 strings at a time for a nice small knot on a narrow scarf. Okay, now I've got one little knot here. There's another one that's not sitting as close as I'd like. But the thing is, if you do your knots nice and tight along this last yarn in your warp, in your weaving, then you don't really need anything else to keep it in place. And then this is the loose end down here, and I'll be weaving that straight down into here with a needle, and that'll secure it nicely. Let's see how long this scarf is. Yes, I think that's rather nice. All right, I'm going to trim the ends, and then I'm going to do something called wet finishing, which you don't really wash it. You wet it, and it's supposed to let the yarns kind of, what they call it, bloom, and they expand just a little bit, and it becomes softer and fluffier. And kind of, this is a nice tight weave, but if there's any gaps in there, it'll fill them in. So, yeah, oh, I really like those colors. Yeah. Nice. All right, there's my bamboo clasped-weft scarf. That's hard to say. Thanks for sticking with me. And now for the carding. Now, I'm not going to speed up through some of this because I really want for folks who are interested in carding to get a little idea of how to do it. I am no expert, though. I'm not starting with locks. I wish I had locks. This is fiber that has been cleaned, and so it makes it a little trickier to do it well. I'm going to make it a little bit faster so that it doesn't take forever. Now that card is really getting full, and probably a little too full, and I'm going to show you how to really brush it out. As I do this, some of the VM, the little bits of dirt and grass, will come out of that fleece. And I'll probably comb this out, card it out, 3 or 4 times. I'll transfer it from one card to another, just like this. See how I turn it upside down and make a little V and kind of pull that off. And I'll be doing that several times before I finally take the rolag off of the cards. Now I'm tightening it down, combing it some more, trying to keep it within the camera view, but that's a little tricky to do. As we get toward the end, you have to very gently kind of pick that nice straightened, cleaned fleece off of those little bristles and put it onto the back of the other card. I find this works really well. It gives you a nice flat surface to work with that won't continue to catch the fiber. And then I just gently, gently roll it with my hands. You can do one of these in just 2 or 3 minutes, really. Doesn't take very long, and you can accumulate a nice little basket of rolags. And once you have that, you have everything you need to start spinning and spin for an hour. What a pleasure that is. Now here's a little spinning video. This is going to be very short here. I don't want to bore anybody to tears. There's my rolags. But spinning is such a delight. This is wool. This is sheep's wool that was given to me by a friend. I've been working on this wool for a while, and that's everything that's on that bobbin. But I'll only do this for a little bit of a minute, and then at the end of this video, if you'd like to have a nice long stretch of like 15 minutes of me spinning with some pretty music, I'll put that at the end of the video, okay? For every 1 or 2 of you that might like that. That was just one little rolag. I have 6 in there, as you saw. Here's the VM that's on my skirt afterward that I was able to flick out. This is my spun wool so far of this type. And on this bobbin, you see I've got a lot of space left on this bobbin. And this is probably, I don't know, 8 to 10 rolags. It's I'm spinning it, I guess, fairly thin, but I'm going to fit a whole lot of it on there. We had such a lovely rain the other day, and I just got a little segment of heavy rain falling on our big fig tree. I finished my mitered square blanket, and I looked for another blanket that was that simple that you could use pickup stitches to continue and not have to sew the blocks together. I really wanted a block blanket, and I really couldn't find anything I wanted. And then I thought, I think if I made another mitered square blanket, I wouldn't be sick of it. I think if I change it up just a little bit, that I might be able to endure another one. So, and I think it was Diana that left a comment saying that maybe I could have bordered the other one in black, and wouldn't that look nice? And I thought, ooh, that is a really good idea. So I think I'm going to do that on this. Black is a great border. So what I want to do this time, instead of just having a scrappy blanket with colors in all different places, I want to have them in diagonal stripes. So I'm starting in the bottom left corner, and this is actually a teal. It looks blue in the camera. Maybe it'll show teal for you. This yarn is a Red Heart Soft. It is number 4 weight. It's a worsted wool, okay? Well, acrylic. And I want to have it here and here and here, and I want it to go up in diagonals that way. Okay, and this is the second one, and it's creamy white. This is a loops and thread yarn, also on a medium weight, number 4 worsted, and I got this in a bulk bag one time. And then the next one is a yarn I've had around forever. Now, it's very acrylic. This is an impeccable. All of these are slightly different from each other. And you can see that this one is bulkier. When I did it up, it's bulging a bit on the side, much further out. It looks like I almost have an extra stitch there, but I don't. Much further out than the white or the teal. This is an impeccable worsted number 4 weight as well. The other colors I'd like to use are this Red Heart Soft, also number 4. And then this is a Vanna's Choice, which is very nice. This is really comparable to the Red Heart Soft. I think the Red Heart Soft is a little bit softer, silkier feeling. I don't like Red Heart Super Saver. I just call it Super Scratchy, but I do like their soft. So Vanna's Choice, I've got a little bit of that gray. I could probably find some more silvery gray like that would do. I don't have much, so I might put it up in the top corner where it doesn't have to travel. This one's going to have to travel all the way up to the other corner of the blanket. I think, I don't know, that might make this a 5x5. It would be more of just a little lap throw, which is fine. But the thing is, I have more than 5 colors. I want to use this as well. I'm just not sure. I'm going to have to think about it. Think about it. Anyway, but that is my next project, and then I'm going to border it in black. So this is just to keep me busy. The other thing that I want to do that I'm going to use when I have half a knitting brain functional, is I want to make myself a cardigan sweater with my hand spun yarn. And I think I have found a pattern. I'm not much of a knitter, so I need something very easy. I need a top-down pattern that starts at the neck and just goes straight down. Don't want any buttonholes, don't want any buttons, don't want any raglan sleeves. Really don't want any ribbing either. I don't want anything but knit and purl. So we'll see if we can make that work, and I'll share that with you too. The morning sunlight is pouring through my little studio window, and yesterday afternoon I started a new project, which is no surprise. I've had this hand spun yarn for a while, balled up and sitting around. I had some of this really pretty blue. I made a woven scarf out of this and gave it to a friend, so I used some of this, but I had some left over. I've got another ball bigger than this one. And I have 2 balls of this kind of lovely cinnamon brown with some gold in it. And I have a good bit of this kind of variegated pink. And it is anyway. I've got some of that in there. I've got some kind of lighter pink like this. And I hope I have enough for this project. I have decided with great fear and trembling to make a sweater, to make a cardigan. I am not a good knitter. I'm not a fancy knitter. I've knit for a lot of years, but not very often. And I've never before successfully knit a sweater. I tried to do one in college. It was a raglan sweater, kind of fitted, with a solid, you see, I think it was a solid white bodice and solid blue sleeves, and it was just as ugly as could be, and it was terrible. And when I finished it, I did finish it, and then I pulled the whole thing out. And I don't want to do that. This is going to be a cardigan. This pattern comes from a lady named Laura Chau, C-H-A-U, and it's called Easy Top Down Raglan. And I can make it longer at the waist. I can make the sleeves longer as well. Now what makes this sweater easy is that it's a top down, which means you start at the neck, which is what this is here, and you gradually work your way down the sweater all the way to the bottom of the waist, kind of in one big thing. It did end up being a raglan sleeve. I kind of couldn't see that, but I'm hoping it'll be big and bulky enough. I don't really like raglan sleeves very much, but it'll be fine. I think it'll be hidden by all the busyness of this yarn. And so all it has is, this is seed stitch at the top, or you could do ribbing, you could do whatever you liked. It's just kind of bumpy. And you can see the corner here. It's very bumpy yarn. It's very thick and thin yarn that I did. I was still learning how to spin, and I was very inconsistent, but I think it's working okay. And then the little placket that goes down the front is is it garter stitch? What is the one that's where you knit all the time, so it ends up being knit and purl back and forth? And then this is stockinette stitch, which looks all knit on the front and all purl on the back. Okay. And some people like that knit stitch. It's very tidy and smooth. And some people really love the bumpiness of the purl stitch. Knit and purl, for those of y'all who don't know much about knitting, it's like two sides of a coin. The knit is one side of the stitch and the purl is the other side. So what happens here is I've got little markers, and every time I come to a marker on the right side of the fabric, this is the business side, the outside, and I've actually early on I put a pin here so that I wouldn't forget which side was which. Like I said, I'm not very good. And every time you get to a marker, you do an increase at this point. So I'm only just barely getting down from the neck, not very far. And so this is the front, one side of the front. This would be my left, okay, if I were wearing it. And then this is the shoulder, and you can see it starting to kind of round. It's going to round over my shoulder. And then this long stretch here is the back, okay. And then we have the other shoulder. And then over here we have the other placket. Okay. So I'm really excited. I was so tickled last night about doing this. I had a hard time going to sleep because I really wanted to stay up and just knit 2 more rows. You know how that is. If I don't have enough yarn, I am expecting another delivery of yarn from a site called the Spinnery Shop, the Spinnery Store. I'll try to leave a link down there. This yarn came from this roving. I bought roving and spun it. This came from Shep's wool, which was great. This time a lady on a Facebook group recommended the Spinnery, and so I decided to try them. But it's all wool. It's all merino wool. One interesting thing I want to show you about some of my, like this big ball. Look at the difference. Look at the difference in this. See this nice twirly barber pole? How beautifully that's spun. And then look at what this did. It just didn't spin up. It's like every single strand is just, it's supposed to be a 2-ply and they're supposed to go around each other, and they're not. I didn't know what was wrong with it, but I went ahead and finished that ball. I don't know how deeply into the ball. That is probably the whole ball. Anyway, I went to see my very good friend and spinning mentor, Lynn, and she looked at that and knew exactly what was wrong with it. She said, Mary Catherine, you plied it the wrong way. I spun it. You're supposed to spin in one direction and ply in the other direction. And I didn't do that. I must have spun it and plied it in the same direction on the spinning wheel, and so it didn't twist up. So I have to take this ball and I have to respin it the other way. Whichever way that is, I got to figure it out. I've got to do that to that one, and then apparently, I don't know if I did it to this one or not, that's got some twist in it. Anyway, that's an important change to make because I really don't want that look in my sweater. I want this look in my sweater. Or really, I think the prettiest of all the yarn that I did is this pink. I've got a whole nother skein of that, and I just think it's delicious to look at, don't you? I've got one little ball that's actually kind of a deeper, it's more of a mauve, it's less pink and more of almost a pale purple. Anyway, I love these colors. So I'm going to try to knit myself a cardigan. I want it to be nice and bulky and big for fall and winter. We don't live in a cold place, so I won't be wearing it very long. It is going to have to be a bit stripy. So you see here, I have finished a pink band around the neck, and now I'm going to start into a blue band and work that for a while. I don't want to have little teeny stripes. I want to have larger bands. So I will keep you up to date on this because I'm enjoying it so much, and this is not a hard pattern, okay? It's mostly knit, some very easy increases by the markers and purl on the other side. There's not a lot to it, but it's plenty to keep my brain how should I say it, confused, doubting itself, rechecking the pattern, but it's not fancy. So I'll keep you posted on this, and hopefully I'll get done with it quickly, and hopefully it'll fit a little bit. I'm not sure about that neck opening. It seems pretty big, and I'm wondering if I'm going to need to do something to it to help make it a little snugger sitting on the neck so it doesn't just hang loose. We will see. All right. Oh, and these are 10.5 size needles, and the yarn is bulkier than what was called for. So I think she might have called for DK weight, and this is more of a chunky weight. Actually, it's so variable. Some of it's very thin, some of it's very thick, so it's hard to tell. I did do a little gauge. It's supposed to be 18 stitches equals an inch, and when I did it, it was 14 stitches equals an inch, which means every stitch that I make with this yarn is giving me an extra 1/4 of an inch distance. So I did have to ponder that a bit when I decided how many to cast on at the beginning, so it didn't end up being this monstrosity of a sweater. Okay, that's it so far. Thanks for being patient with me. Well, that's just about it for today's video. Here's a little candlelight if you're feeling in a fallish mood. I know I am, because today is September 1st. And I am so excited for cooler weather and pumpkins and sweaters and candles. Now here's some spinning for you. Have a great day. I'm so glad you stopped by.